Good evening. My name is Krista Bowe, and I'm an academic advisor for the TRIO Student Support Services program, and I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's Wolf Talk. This Wolf Talk speaker series is sponsored by TRIO Student Support Services and Student Involvement in Leadership. The series focuses on themes from this year's Common Read selection, Salt to the Sea, self-identity, humanity, hidden history, and is also held in conjunction with our Common Read. Today's speaker is Dr. Ayaz Virji. Dr. Virji is a rural family physician practicing in Dawson, Minnesota. He received his bachelor's degree in history at Georgetown University in 1996 and his medical degree from Georgetown Medical School in 2000. He then completed his specialty training in family medicine at Duke University's Medical Center in 2003. In addition to 14 years of practice, he has also authored 2 books, several peer-reviewed scientific publications, 1 patent, and studies comparative religion on the side. He has done interviews for the Washington Post, ABC News, and several radio stations regarding Muslim outreach in the response to the rise in Islamophobia in early 2017. Common Read author Ruta Sepetys touched on humanity in her book, Salt to the Sea. Her book enlightened us all on the various viewpoints of each of her characters and the importance of understanding different perspectives. We also have a donation box in the back, and we'll be taking donations for Doctors Without Borders in honor of Dr. Virji. It is now my great pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker, Dr. Ayaz Virji.
Thank you, Krista. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. So I'd like to thank you for having me here. I'd like to thank all of you for coming out tonight. This is a poignant topic, one that's quite timely, and I appreciate your time on a weeknight coming out to hear this. I'd like to thank Lacey as well and Dr. Downs again for the invitation. It is an honor to be here at your institution. He gave me a bit of a tour. It's a beautiful campus, and I think you're very lucky to be here. So I want to start by giving you a little introduction to the Love Thy Neighbor talks. That's what we've been doing, okay, since post-November 8th, 2016. And I'll tell you a little bit more about me and my journey through what we were experiencing as far as in Dawson and why are we there. I grew up in Florida, trained in the Northeast. So what am I doing in Dawson, Minnesota, which is a rural town, 1,500 people in Minnesota, southwest Minnesota. So for me, I've been practicing for about 14 years, and giving back and treating those who are in most need has always been part of the medical profession for me. It's not that the knowledge I get from medical practice and medical school was something that belonged to me. It was something that I was a vicegerent of, that I have to share. And the reason we came to rural Minnesota is to help answer that gap in healthcare. So rural America has 20% of the population, but only about 9% of the doctors. So my wife and I decided, if not us, then who? Who's going to do this? My entire career I've spent working with free clinics. I've been working with the community medical clinic when I was at Georgetown, helped found that one, worked with the Urban Ministries Free Clinic in Raleigh, North Carolina when I was a resident, and the Red Crescent Free Clinic in Tampa, and now the Hattie Medical Clinic in Minneapolis. So always, as far as part of my career, delivering this service to those who are most in need was part of the profession. It was more than just the profession. There was a moral component to it. So that's why we're in Dawson. So what happened after November 8th, 2016? It was a big deal for us. So I came from a very high-paying position in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, to come serve the residents in Dawson. It's difficult to get doctors out in rural America. It's very difficult. And most of the time what happens is when you get doctors who have trained abroad, and they have some sort of contract that they're going to come serve an underserved area, and they can't wait to get out and go live in the city. And that's funny, because for me it's the exact opposite. I did the exact opposite. I came because I wanted to be here. I wanted to meet that demand. I wanted the health equity to somehow become better. And again, if not me, who's going to do it? Am I just going to complain about it? So for me, it's funny because we would be visiting family in Minneapolis, my wife and I, who's here today. And they would say, hey, when's your contract up so we can come, move to the cities? It's like, I'm not going to do that. I'm where I want to be. And so Donald Trump said a lot of things during his campaign and currently. Even today, this is perfect, if you saw the tweets. He said Islam hates us. He said Muslims should be on a registry. Mexicans are rapists. He said I could go out and shoot somebody and my followers will still follow me. He said that. He didn't pretend. That wasn't something he was caught saying. He said it very clearly. So the majority of residents in Dawson voted for him. So 60% of the county voted for the guy who wants to put me on a registry because I'm dangerous, right? Because I'm brown and I'm a Muslim. And said Islam hates us. I'm a Muslim. I don't hate anybody. I love it here. I love America. I feel proud to be here. It is, and I still believe, even despite what's gone on, it is the greatest country in the world. We have traveled all over, and I can say that with experience. I don't hate anybody. And then Michael Flynn comes out, NSA National Advisor. Yeah, Islam is a cancer. 1.6 billion people have a cancer. We've got to eradicate it. Really? Didn't I just tell you I came from a city where it was a very high-paying job? I took a large pay cut, took a small salary, come to serve people. Maybe that's the cancer. Maybe I have a cancer. It's making me crazy? These are the things. But you voted for that guy. You did it. And you didn't. He said it openly. And this is not a political discussion because it has nothing to do with Republican or Democrat. Nothing. Because both platforms actually, philosophically, if you look at them, have a lot of good in them. And when you argue the debates passionately and with a sincere heart and a good mind, you actually come up with something even better. It has to do with morality and virtue and love and kindness. A couple of weeks ago, one of my son's friends comes to him and says, your mom is a part-time suicide bomber because she wears a scarf on her head? So if somebody wears a scarf on their head because it's cold, it's okay. But if she wears one because she chooses to, it's a problem. We're in that bucket of suicide bombers. I should be on a registry because of my color of my skin, because of my religion. According to the Department of Justice, again, this, you could call it whatever you want. This isn't the news. This is the Department of Justice. 96% of the terrorist attacks that have happened over the last 20 years have come from non-Muslims. So it's only 4% that come from Muslims. So when we talk about a ban and we talk about a registry and we talk about refugees, so we want to stop 4%. So the 96% we're okay with. Let them kill people. I gave this talk at Morris, University of Minnesota Morris, actually 2 days ago. And wonderful people, again, honored to be, and it's funny how this talk has really kind of evolved into a more university setting. But prior to that, a couple weeks ago, and it may have been in response to the publication that the talk was there, the MSA members, Muslim Student Association members, were getting death threats. And I think the Republican College Association or Student Association published a sign. They had a meeting. All are welcome except for Islamic terrorists. Really? So other terrorists are okay. So the 96% who shoot people are okay. It's just Islamic terrorists. Those are the ones. Right? Because who has the monopoly on terrorism? Muslims. Over the last 6 weeks, 4 mass shootings and deaths. 4. Steve Paddock, you remember Vegas, 58 people. Not terrorism. Then you had the shooting in Walmart in Colorado, 3 people dead, he ran away. You had what happened outside of San Antonio at that church. Then you had a crazy Muslim guy. And again, all these people are insane, and I condemn it 100%, and I'm exhausted in condemning terrorism. I'm exhausted in condemning these murderers. It's almost like I have to say, hi, I'm Ayaz. I'm not a terrorist, by the way. It's tiring. You know, I gave this talk at Georgetown, and we had a nice forum prior, and the students are like, you know, I'm just tired. Why are we in that bucket? We hurt too. We bleed too. When one of our neighbors dies or one of our American civilians die, we are bothered by that too. But at the same time, we have to defend why we condemn that with every ounce of our soul. And Islam condemns it. And I promise you, if the Prophet Muhammad himself were alive today, he would be the first person to fight ISIS and to condemn ISIS, because justice is far more important than any of that. And there is no such thing as an offensive war in Islam. These people have hijacked it, and we'll get into that. We'll get into those details. When I first gave this talk in Dawson, my community, they protested. They called the school. Muslims shouldn't be allowed to talk. Is this the America we want? Should I just go back? People can say, go back to India. I've never been to India. You want me to just have a good vacation? Where am I supposed to go? My nephew, this is real. Part of this is visceral, so you understand what's going on. My nephew in Florida, one of his teachers said, go back to where you came from, a substitute teacher. Now, that substitute teacher didn't lose her job, nothing like that. So he was like, well, where am I supposed to go? The hospital? I was born down the road. That's where I'm from. Am I not American? Can I not be American because I'm brown? Somebody was asking a friend of mine, is he a citizen of this country? This is in my community where everybody knows me. They have no problem coming to me as a physician. I don't have to be there. It's hard work, and I don't get paid as much as I easily could. So yes, is he a citizen? Are you a citizen? Is that fair? Where did you come from? Well, surely, when a man really loves a woman, I shouldn't have to explain that to you. That's where we are. And that's why we're giving these talks. I don't want to give these talks. The notoriety that's come down is not because of something I asked for. I'm busy. I was rounding in the hospital today. I got to go back when I get back. But the important work is here. Again, if not me, then who's going to do it? Islam is very much a personal thing to me. My religion is personal. I don't like talking about it. I didn't come to the Midwest to teach people about Islam. I came to practice, came to be a country doc. But when the commander in tweets what he did today, did you guys see that? This is why I'm here. He tweeted today pictures of some Muslims, quote unquote, they're fake, destroying a statue of the Virgin Mary in front of everybody. Then he tweeted a picture of a Dutch disabled kid being jumped by a Muslim guy being beaten up. Then later, it came from the UK, a radical right group. Then the Prime Minister of the UK condemned him for doing that because it was fake. It wasn't real. And then Sarah Sanders, Huckabee Sanders, says, well, it doesn't matter that it was fake or not. It was the message. That's what she said. This is the times that we live in. Really? Did you know that in Islam, the Virgin Mary is one of the 4 most venerated women in all of history? She's called the Mother of Paradise. It would be totally un-Islamic to take a statue of her and throw her on the ground. Have you ever seen a picture of the Virgin Mary without a head covering? Part of the reason we wear Muslim women wear that. It doesn't make any sense. And yeah, it's because we're trying to go kill Dutch disabled kids. What good comes out of that? But then some people are going to look at that, and they're going to say, oh my gosh, he was right. Let's do a registry. Let's stop refugees from coming here, right? We don't want them. They're terrorists, right? Jesus was a refugee, was he not? He left Bethlehem because Herod was coming to kill him, and the angel said, go to Egypt. He went to Egypt. Then finally, when it was safe, the angel said, you can come back, but don't go to Bethlehem. Go to Galilee. It's safer. That's where he went. Now, can you imagine? The Egyptians said, no, you're a terrorist. Just go back. We don't want you. But we'll talk about that. We'll get into that. So anyway, Pastor Mandy, who was an interim pastor of the area, invited me to take some of my emotions because I was not happy about this. And we were ready to go. We were ready to leave. I had a job overseas. I have family overseas. It was easy to go and make more money. It would have been the easiest decision I would have made. Leave it all behind. Who's going to take care of Dawson residents? We can't get doctors there. I have a number of disabled children in my practice. Who's going to take care of them? We can't get doctors. Even all the surrounding towns are trying to recruit me to come because we can't get them. So Pastor Mandy said, hey, let's educate, because what she was seeing where people were after the election, and again, this is not a coincidence. Hate crimes are up 86% since November. 3 mosques are burned the week after the election. Is that just a coincidence? 150 Jewish sites, bomb threats, swastikas. This happened in Morris 2 weeks ago. Swastikas on the chalkboards. Did you know that? And it was funny because I was walking in my own hospital. I mentioned that to a nurse, and they said, well, they don't even know what it means. And I said, oh, yeah, maybe they think it's an ancient Hindu symbol and they're venerating Hinduism, right? Because that's where it comes from, right? That's where Hitler got it. But that's real. That's where we are. That's where people like me are. I've gotten death threats from this. This talk is a talk about love and inclusion. Since when has talking about peace and love been so dangerous? So the purpose of today's discussion is to know one another, to dispel myths. We're not here to convert. It was funny because when I went to the, and again, I didn't start this series. And this has turned out, we've done over 10 of these, and we've been across different states, and it's fantastic. A lot of media coverage. Al Jazeera, Katie Couric is coming to Dawson. Rick Steves is coming to Dawson. I mean, all of this is happening. We didn't want this, and I'm ready for it. I'm ready to turn the mantle over to somebody who does, because I just want to go back and be a country doc and not worry about this stuff. But when I first started this, I didn't start it. It was Pastor Mandy in the local church. They invited me and said, hey, listen, we're hearing a lot of Islamophobia. I'm offended by it. Let's go do something. Let's teach. And I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. I'm busy. I'm out of here. But I thought about it, and I said, again, if not me, then who? The same reason for doing free clinics and coming to Dawson. And then when I gave the talk in Montevideo, local town, a guy stood up and said, you're the Antichrist. Doesn't matter what you do. It's like, really? So working in free clinics, going out to Dawson, it doesn't matter. I'm the Antichrist because I don't believe what you believe. Really? So if that's true, let's take your logic further. Hitler tried to cleanse the Aryan race for the purpose of serving Lord Jesus, and on the Nazi buckles they had in God is with us, okay? And Gandhi, who was one of the most peaceful people of the 20th century, who said, I am no religion, but I am every religion, he's burning in hell, and Hitler is in heaven enjoying salvation, and you have more in common with Hitler than you do with me. And he was offended. I was like, why are you? I'm just taking what you said and explaining it to you. And then the next person who agreed that I was the Antichrist said, yeah, but we're very glad that you're here. Really? You want to live among the Antichrist. Logically, how do you get there here and with a sincere heart? You can't. The Quran 2, verse 256, there shall be no compulsion in the acceptance of religion. Islam isn't interested in conversions. What you see are these zealots and murderers and rapists on TV representing a very, very small minority of people who call themselves Muslims. Has nothing to do with what Islam is and the vast majority of us believe. And it's very clear in the Quran, and we'll talk about that. There are as many paths to God as there are human breaths, meaning in Islam we have over 124,000 prophets. We don't even know who all they are. Confucius could have been a prophet. Buddha could have been a prophet. Socrates, the prophet himself, probably said was a prophet. Jesus was a prophet. Noah, all these people. So for us, it has nothing to do with what you call yourself. It has to do with what you do. If you're, the Quran in Islam is interested in verbs. It's not interested in nouns. See, as soon as you say, I'm a Muslim, then I'm saying, okay, you're not, therefore you're not part of the club. We're different, based upon what you called yourself. Or I'm a Christian, or I'm a Buddha. Well, if you're not a Buddhist, then you're not part of the club. That's the noun way. That's, for us, the wrong way. It is the verb way. Muslim itself means one who submits. Allah isn't a name. It's the Arabic for one God. Islam isn't a name. It means peace. So anybody who is practicing righteousness, anybody who is practicing love and virtue and kindness and patience, by definition, is a Muslim. By definition. So now, as long as you're practicing those virtues, those characteristics, doesn't matter what you call yourself. Even an atheist or a humanist, you're part of the team. You're part of the group. That's what it says in the Quran. Secondly, don't use the 0.1% out there as my spokesperson. What you see about it, this might be the first time you're hearing from a practicing Muslim, maybe the last. You're hearing right now from the 99.9 percentile. You see it in the media all the time for the last 20, we hear this thing fake news all the time, right? There's so much of it out there. But when they talk about Islam and all the terrorism, for some reason, oh, that part's real. No, we accept that. No, that's terrible. What, does Sean Hannity have a degree in religious studies or something? He has no clue. There are 1.6 billion Muslims in the world. According to the State Department, if you take into consideration all terrorist groups, and there are 58 of them, and you can get this from the government's website. Go to the State Department. Don't believe me? Look it up. It's there. There are a maximum of 200,000 Muslim terrorists. So what's that? 200,000 divided by 1.6 billion. Do the math. It's 0.01%. Okay, it's not even the 99.9%, it's the 99.99%. I just say 99.9% because I'm lazy. So, would you say these are Muslims? That's like me saying David Koresh represents Christianity. Is he your spokesperson? Is Dylan Roof your spokesperson? The guy who killed all those people in those black people? Is Joseph Comey your spokesperson? Do you know who Joseph Comey is? Does anybody know who Joseph Comey is? One person. Two people. Two people and maybe some shy people. He's the leader of the Lord's Resistance Army. He has killed over 100,000 people in the name of Christ in South Sudan. Why don't you know that? You know about the brown people. Over 100,000 people in the name of Christ. Is that okay? Was that okay maybe because they're black? Because they're African? That was okay. We don't need to know about that. So I actually don't blame people for Dawson or anywhere not knowing about Islam, because if I were not Indian and I were Caucasian and I grew up here, I would probably feel the same way. I'd be scared of people like me. I'd be scared of Muslims. Because every time for the last 20 years you hear the word Islam, what comes after it? Terrorist, radical, jihadist. Because it's sexy, it makes news, right? Just like you don't hear, you have this rise in atheism, you don't hear about good things that churches are doing either. I mean, there's so many amazing things that the ELCA, the Evangelical Lutheran Church of America, is doing. Amazing stuff I'm so impressed by. It doesn't make national news. The bridges they're building, the orphanages they're building, the homeless shelters, we don't see that. Same with, you don't see the United Muslim Foundation who are sitting there putting food in people's mouths, or Council on American Islamic Relations who are going to Haiti trying to fix, people with palate issues, or, Muslims groups building homeless shelters in Chattanooga. One of my friends was involved with that. But we don't hear that. So I don't blame you, and I think that there's been a lot of disinformation out there about Islam, and that's why I'm doing this. So you know the difference between misinformation and disinformation? Misinformation is, listen, I didn't know. I made a mistake. You asked me what day of the week, and I said it was Friday, but it's really Tuesday, but I didn't know. Disinformation is when I know, but I purposely tell you, no, that's not the case, to spark an emotion or an idea. That's what's out there. According to UNICEF, this is the UN Children's Fund, 1946, not a political organization, so cannot be called fake news. Whether you don't like the news, I don't care. It's not fake. This is not fake. You can't just say it's fake because I don't like it. And Doctors Without Borders, which is one of my favorite charities. I give to them all the time. If I thought they were political, I wouldn't. Either way, because I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican. Over 500,000 Muslims have been displaced due to ethnic cleansing by Muslims by Burmese military. Do you know what the Burmese are? In Myanmar, in South Asia? They're Buddhists. So 500,000 Muslims have been displaced by Buddhists. And I'm going to read to you from their website. Children and their parents are being shot, stabbed, beheaded, or burned alive. Women are being gang raped. Entire villages are being burned to the ground. At least 1,000 civilians have been killed by government troops since August, and possibly as many as 5,000 according to human rights groups. So these are Muslims being killed by non-Muslims. like the Joseph Comey idea. But that's not terrorism, right? That can't be, because it's not a brown Muslim person, right? 4 out of the 5 mass shootings I told you about earlier. Which one was called terrorism? The Muslim guy, of course. They're all crazy. They're all murderers. But it's only the Muslim guy who's a terrorist. And then after that happened, the commander in tweet up there, we need a change. We need a wall. We need a registry. But then after the first 3, the other 3, it was like, no, this is not time for legislation. This is time for us to pray. This is time for us to... And yes, of course, we should... It's a catastrophe. It's a catastrophe to anybody, of course. But then when asked about legislation, no, it's not time for that. But it is time when a brown person doesn't. Look at the tweets today. You want the difference between academic, what you guys are doing here, and just nonsense? Look at those tweets today. And when the leader of the free world, which probably won't be the case for much longer, the most powerful person in the world puts that on a tweet, it says something. Okay, an insane person, a far radical right or far radical left person tweets something, who cares? It's silly. But when the most powerful person in the world does it, it says something. It makes my job a lot harder. Because then people are going to say, well, why do you hate Virgin? I don't hate the Virgin Mary. She's the most venerated. She's the mother of Jesus. She's the mother of the Messiah. Did you know that Muslims called Jesus the Messiah? It's in the Quran. Hannity's not going to tell you about that. So how do we get there? These are ambitious goals. We have disinformation, we have lies, we have stuff. You have a doctor who doesn't want to be here doing this. How do we get there? Devotion to knowledge, not Fox News knowledge. There's no other way. That's it. You're in a place, you're in a university who is committed to that. There's no other way. This is the hard road, but this is the only road. Proverbs 3:5 through 19, never rely on what you think you know. Never let you think you are wiser than you are. The Lord corrects the ones he loves. Wisdom is more valuable than jewels. Nothing you could want can compare to it. The Lord created the earth through his wisdom, through his Sophia. Here's Solomon telling you, this is the way. This is better for you than anything, any material possession, any car or whatever. It's wisdom. Muhammad himself said, the ink of a scholar is holier than the blood of a martyr. God has not distributed anything among his people more excellent than wisdom. A wise person sleeping is better than an ignorant person's worshiping all night. And you'll find similar sayings in Buddhism. You'll find similar sayings in Hinduism. But this isn't the easy road. This is the hard road. It's so much easier to be sheep. Let them tell us what to think, and then I just pretend that that was my idea. It's easy. The left does this, the right does this. We just absorb it like sheep. We just eat what we're fed. But if we use our superpower, and all of us have this, all of you in this room are far smarter than I am, far better than I am. You use your brain, you open your heart, you have to have sincerity in your heart, and you have to have exercise this superpower of ours, and you'll find it, and the world will open up to you. Jesus tells us in Matthew 7:13 through 14, enter through the narrow gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction. Many enter through it, but small is the gate, and narrow the road that leads to life, and only few find it. This is Jesus talking about to his followers. Now, Jesus is saying many, most of you, he's saying this, these are not my words, are going to destruction. Very few of you are going to salvation. It's in Matthew. So think of this room. Think of how many people we have. Maybe 100, 150 people here. So what is many? What is that, 90%, 80%? Let's just say 80%. So that means 20% of us are actually going to heaven? And 80% of us are going to hell? That's scary. Are you part of that 80%? Am I part of that 80%? I know what the guy who called me the Antichrist thought I was. Because if you think I just said Jesus is the Son of God and I'm done, I'm sorry. He tells you in Matthew, those of you who worship me and call me Lord, you will be gnashing your teeth trying to get into paradise. And then you'll say to me, Lord, we prayed to you. We did this, we did that. And I will say to you, I don't know you. Get away from me, you wicked people. The only people who will come here are the ones who did what my Father commanded them to. It's in Matthew. It's in every one of the Gospels. If you want to say I'm a Christian, you have to take the whole package. You can't just take John 3:15 and that's it, I'm done. You got to read this thing. You have to read this book. This is an amazing book. This is mine from when I was a kid. I went to a Lutheran school for 10 years, and I really love reading this. I still read it. But you have to read it. And I've read it maybe 5, 7 times. And if you really want to understand it, you have to go through it over and over, read the Gospels, read it, and then the messages start opening up. Again, this is the hard road. The easy road is to say, I don't like that guy. I'm part of this, you're part of the other. And you know, it's so easy to stoke hatred to win power. I could do it. I will never do it, but I could do it. I could stoke hatred. I'm a good speaker. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in the day of judgment when we die. 100% of us in here we're dead. We're going to die. No doubt about it. That's the one absolute we will all know here that I can tell you. And guess what? I will pay for my sins. You will pay for your sins. There will be a day of reckoning. It's a day of reconciliation. So if you've hit something, if you've not done something, if you've not used the superpower and God tells you, I gave that to you and you didn't do it, why didn't you do it? And I sent this person, why didn't you do it? It's on you, man. I have my own stuff I have to deal with. There's no one who can help you at that time. It's only you. And if you believe, now if you're an agnostic or an atheist, that's a separate conversation, certainly, but if you are a theist and you believe in a salvation or damnation, then you have to believe all of this. Otherwise, you're not following the Bible, or the Quran, or the Gita, or the Torah. And you know who took this advice? Our founding fathers. So it says in the Bible, do not judge others so that God will not judge you. I was called the Antichrist the last time again. Not the last time, but several times ago. For God will judge you in the same way you judge others, and he will apply the same rules to you as you apply to others. This is Jesus telling you that. Was he lying? So when you look at somebody else, when I look at somebody else, I've been judgmental in my life, and I'm advising myself as much as I'm advising anybody here. Don't do that. Because then when it comes my time, I'm going to use the same standard on you that you used on somebody else. How's that for justice? Well, I'm going to watch Fox News and see what they said about you. And that's it. Is that fair? Is that just? So who took this advice? Our founding fathers. And I'm going to read to you a quote from Islam and the Founding Fathers written by Frankie Martin, who is a research fellow at the American University's School of International Service, published in Common Ground News. Americans should read the works of our own founding fathers. These great scholars and statesmen showed an immense respect for Islam and went out of their way to welcome Muslims. John Adams, America's second president, named the Prophet Muhammad one of the world's greatest truth seekers alongside Socrates and Confucius. Thomas Jefferson, the third president and author of the Declaration of Independence, learned Arabic using his copy of the Quran and hosted the first iftar dinner. So you know what the iftar dinner is? That's the breaking of the fast tradition. That's what Muslims, after we fast during Ramadan, you break your fast. So this is the first year in many, many years that the White House has declined to do that, which is fine. It's no big deal, but I mean, Thomas Jefferson thought it might have been reasonable. The Founding Fathers also drew upon principles of Muslim civilizations, among many others, in fashioning the American political and judicial system. But perhaps the most striking writings on Islam by the Founding Fathers come from Benjamin Franklin, America's great philosopher and scientist. Franklin expressed his respect for Islam and his strong belief in religious freedom. Franklin asserted that Native Americans would have been far safer had they been living in a Muslim country, as Islam shows even prisoners of war more humanity than the frontiersmen had been shown. Franklin praised the compassion of Muhammad, writing that the Prophet had applauded the humaneness of soldiers who treated their captives well. And he's specifically referring, I mean, you have to learn the life of the Prophet Muhammad. You can't, it's like saying, what is Christianity without Jesus? You can't know it. You need to know Jesus' life. You can't know Islam by radicals and what they're doing. That's like me saying, you want to learn Christianity? Go to the KKK. Go to the Crusaders. Go to the Salem witch trials. Would that be fair? Use the same standard for me that you use on yourself. Because you know who does that? You know who does that? Al-Qaeda does that. ISIS does that. They take these statements, which we'll talk about, and they talk about how Christianity is a barbaric religion, and they're trying to kill all the Muslims, and they're getting their recruits that way. So my only advice to myself and to everyone here is, let's just be better than them. Let's just not use ISIS's standards. Let's be Americans. Let's use our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence. We're honored to have a government that are founded on these principles which are so incredible. How many other countries are founded on a constitution with these ideals? That's modern-day countries. 0. Ours is the only one. Quran 5:48, for each among you we have appointed a law and a way. If God willed it, he could have made you all one community, one religion, but he willed otherwise, so that he might try you in what was given to you. So compete with one another in good deeds until God is your resurrection. At that time, he will settle your differences. So again, Islam is embracing plurality. For the Muslim, the only thing guaranteed is plurality, meaning diversity. And diversity is ever becoming more diverse. I mean, if you think of even genetically identical twins, they have unique fingerprints. Sameness is not what Islam wants. We want diversity. We want inclusion. And it says the best of you is those who do good deeds, those who are righteous, those who are virtuous. That's what we say. It doesn't say those who are Muslims. It doesn't say those who are, Christian or whatever. It is do that because that is what matters. Faith without deeds is like a body without a soul. It's a corpse. All right. So now we'll get into the actual talk. I'm finished with the introduction. This is why I always go over. All right. So to test our knowledge, I'm going to give you some quotes from the Bible and from the Quran. And I'd like you to just be very honest with me, and you raise your hand if you think it's from the Bible or from the Quran. Because so many people who have told me what Islam is, who have never actually looked at this, but have accused me of believing things I've never heard of in my life, don't even know their own books. And I have studied comparative religion, so I know your book. And I honor it, and I revere it more than you because I think I follow it. All right, we'll start with some simple ones. And Jesus sensed disbelief in them. He said, who are my helpers unto God? The apostles said, we are God's helpers. We believe in God. Bear witness, we are submitters. How many in this room believe this is from the Bible? Raise your hand. Okay. Shy people. All right. How many believe this is from the Quran? That's about half and half. Okay. So this is the Quran, chapter 3, verse 52. On account of the angels, a woman should have a covering over her head to show she is under her husband's authority. How many believe this is from the Bible? I thought it was the Muslims who did this, though. But you guys know this. How many think this is from the Quran? Okay, so this is the Bible, 1 Corinthians 11:10. Not 2 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians, right? My second favorite book, 2 Corinthians. Silly. The angel said, O Mary, truly God gives thee glad tidings of a word from him, whose name is the Messiah, Jesus, son of Mary, high honored in this world and in the hereafter. She said, my Lord, how will I have a child while no man has touched me? He said, thus does God create whatsoever he will. How many believe this is from the Bible? Okay. Sounds very biblical. How many people believe this is from the Quran? Okay, so it's the Quran. It doesn't sound Quranic, but is Quran chapter 3, verse 45. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is much better for you to lose one of your limbs than your whole body to go to hell. How many believe this is from the Quran? Okay, one person. Maybe 3, 5-ish. Okay, how many believe this is from the Bible? Okay. I thought this was a Muslim thing. I thought it was the Muslims who were like killing and chopping off things. So this is Matthew 5:30. This isn't from the Old Testament. This is Jesus telling you this. So you kind of have to explain to me, what do you mean? I know what he means. But I want to put it to you, those who say Muslims are barbaric because we have radical leaders of weird, Wahhabi sects doing things. Yeah. Crazy people and radicals do things. We all have that dirty laundry. Christians have Joseph Kony. You've got the Rohingya crisis with the Buddhists. Jews have been persecuted their entire history. Women have been persecuted their entire known history. We believe in God and the revelation given to us and to Abraham, Ishmael, Isaac, Jacob, and the tribes, and to that of Moses and Jesus, and that given to all prophets from their Lord. We make no distinction between one and another, and we submit to God. That's the Quran. When the Lord gives you victory in battle and you take prisoners, and you may see among them a beautiful woman that you may want to marry, take her to your home, shave her head, cut her fingernails, and change her clothes. You may marry her after 1 month. Later, if you no longer want her, you should let her go free. Since you forced her to have sex with you, you cannot enslave her. Is that the Quran? Is that the Bible? Or neither? So this is the Bible. This is Deuteronomy. Read it. It's there. I'll give you mine. You can't have it for keeps, just for now. Last one. The final key to the way I promote is bravado. I play to people's fantasies. People may not always be thinking big themselves, but they can get excited by those who do. That is why a little hyperbole or lying never hurts. People want to believe that something is the biggest, the greatest, and the most spectacular. How many people think that's the Bible? A few. How many believe that's the Quran? Maybe, not sure. That's the art of the deal, Donald Trump. Remember those beautiful soft towels? Beautiful towels, throwing them to that crowd. So beautiful soft towels. How can towels be beautiful? All right, so the next part is just understanding the Quran. So I want you to understand, I wanted to show you this part particularly because I want to show you how easy it is to hurt somebody or to hurt an impression, right? I gave you some negative connotative verses from the Bible, and I gave you positive connotative verses from the Quran. We can play that game all day, and we're both losers if we do that. Totally. Okay? Because the verses I read for you from, Christianity is a religion of peace. I know it very well. I went to a Lutheran school for 10 years. I went to a Catholic school for 8 years, and I had nothing but veneration. I still remember my pastor when I was a young child in elementary school, Pastor Renner. I loved him. He was a wonderful man. I remember one of my professors at Georgetown. I took classes at the Center for Christian-Muslim Relations. His name was John Vold. He was a Christian. I thought he was better than any of the other ones, including the Muslim ones. So it's a religion of peace and love. That's what Christianity is. And anybody can take these quotes out and misquote and without context make it look like that's what we're telling you to do. Jesus said, I come not to bring peace. I come to bring the sword. Jesus said, I came to burn this place, and I wish it were already kindled. Okay, now, if you take those, like ISIS will do, and start telling them, yeah, those Western Christians are trying to kill you, join us. We could make the same mistake and just say, well, Hannity must know what he's talking about. He's on there. He's on that. He's an anchor. He must be. So when he quotes these obnoxious things about the Quran without giving you context, that's just silly. Now you know how I feel. Now, when Jesus said, I come to bring peace, I come to bring the sword, not peace, he didn't tell you I'm coming to kill you. He was saying, my message is one of love, and my message is one of inclusion. People are going to be violent to you. This is going to break families, because people don't want that. They want power. So he's not telling you I'm coming to kill you. He's telling you my message is going to be a difficult one. When he says, this world is on fire and I wish it was killed, he's not talking about burning it up. He's talking about burning the evil out. Getting the evil out. See how it opens up? Now, you have to afford me the same context if you took verses from the Quran, because it is no difference. Now, let's take a moment just to understand how you approach the Quran. So the Quran itself is not a storybook. It's not a linear book like the Bible where you read and you can read a whole chapter. The Quran is a book of principles. Okay? It's like a dictionary or an encyclopedia. You wouldn't go to an encyclopedia or a dictionary and just say, okay, I want to just have some light reading for the plane or whatever. Right? So the Quran doesn't do that. And the Quran jumps topic to topic. You want to hear about Mary in one place, in another place, another topic, another place you wouldn't understand it. And it does so purposefully. It does for a reason. And, it was revealed over 23 years. The first 13 years were foundational, meaning the Muslims didn't have a state. They had nothing, but they were being tortured. They were being oppressed by the Meccans. The Meccans, they buried children, women. They buried girls alive. This is what these people were. This is how barbaric they were. Okay, they didn't women were like cattle. They buried them alive. They oppressed the poor. That was what happened. So the first 13 years were the foundations of Islam were being developed. Love thy neighbor. Be honest. Honor your parents. There is no compulsion in religion. These are the principles. The rest of the Quran, the next 10 years, happened after the Prophet was kicked out of Mecca because they were going to kill him. They didn't like his message. He got too much power. He went to Medina. Now he had to form a state because everybody now said, okay, what is this religion? You can't form a state or a society without precepts, without laws, without governance. So no different than our Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. The Declaration of Independence is very philosophical. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. The Constitution puts meat on that. These are the laws. This is how we, in order to form a more perfect union, provide justice, ensure social welfare, protect liberty, we're going to have these laws. So that's for us foundational. So that then it gets very visceral and granular. And you can easily take one of those out of context and make it look brutal, and then say, oh, Islam must mean, this. And that's exactly what radicals do. This is a quote from Ingrid Mattson, who's the chair of Islamic Studies from Huron College at the University of West Ontario. Readers of the Quran must shed the notion that a literalist reading of the Quran is somehow more authentic or pious than an informed interpretation. Ironically, the minority of Muslims who apply a narrow fundamentalist reading to the Quran find as their allies a small group of anti-Muslim bigots who similarly take verses out of the context to prove their hateful assertions. So if you think that about Islam, then you have more in common with ISIS than you think, because that's what they're doing. And they're doing that to other religions. Let's just be better than ISIS. Very simple. Let's keep the bar very low. Let's just be a little better than ISIS. Secondly, I mentioned about how the Quran is jumping from topic to topic. And this is a similar quote from Ingrid Mattson. The content of the Quranic revelations is as varied as the diversity of the worldly and transcendental concerns of humanity. Just as any individual is rarely concerned with one aspect of their life at any time, but constantly shifting. You're here listening to a lecture. Maybe you think about, what did I have for dinner, or what time am I going to go to bed, or did I pay that bill, or how are the kids doing? They are constantly shifting their attention from one concern to another, from marital relations to finances to anxiety about health, spiritual pain, difficulty in making a moral decision, etc. That's the way the Quran is constructed. Okay. So let's move forward. Now, it wasn't meant to be easy. The Quran is not an easy document. So then you might say, well, if it's so, godly, why isn't it easy? Why didn't God make it easy? Right? Why isn't calculus easy? Why isn't Shakespeare easy? You have a superpower. You can get there. And God wants you to use it. Where is fancy bred? In the heart or in the head? It is engendered in the eyes. Then fancy dies, in its carriage where it lies. Merchant of Venice, Shakespeare. What does that mean? I know what it means because I read the Cliff Notes. He's one of the greatest authors of history. It takes time. It takes intellect. It takes study. The superpower. The superpower and an open heart, sincere heart. If you don't have sincerity in your heart, it doesn't matter. And somebody with a strong mind but an insincere heart easily controls you. Somebody with a strong heart but a weak mind is easily controlled. You need both. You have to have both. It's a prerequisite for progress. Now, if you don't want progress, you just want fighting and, then that's a different story. You can do whatever you want. No problem. That's called regressive freedom. All right, let's talk about terrorism. How many believe that the Quran promotes terrorism? Be honest, because I'm here for you. Anyone? Well, you must be very advanced, because nobody, then I wouldn't need to be here. But I appreciate that. So, absolutely not. In every way, shape, and form, it condemns it. The Quran 474 says, "What ails you that you do not fight in the way of God for the weak and the oppressed men, women, and children who cry out, 'Lord, give us a protector, a helper.' Those who believe fight in the way of God and fight against allies of Satan. Satan is ever feeble." So this gets thrown at me. Well, God's saying go fight, fight. This was a time where the prophet moved from Mecca to Medina. There were a lot of poor people, including children, who couldn't make the migration. So the Meccans, they killed them. They tortured them. They tore their arms off. Okay? They cut their tongues out. They were trying to get the prophet to come back. So the prophet's like, "God, what do I do?" And the prophet said, God said, "Fight." Because war is better than oppression. Okay? But then how do I fight? What do you do? Now for us, again, you cannot take, just like you cannot take the Bible without Jesus, you cannot take the Quran without Muhammad. Just like in anything, you need theory and practice. You need the book and you need the real-life example. No different than medicine. In medical school, first 2 years, you're in a book, 24/7. I remember those days. Then the next 2 years, you're with patients side by side, doing procedures, doing surgeries. So how would you feel if your surgeon who was coming to do your appendectomy and you said, "How many of these have you done?" "I read a lot about it. I know this stuff. Please, just let me go." No, you would expect. You need theory and practice. There's intellectual knowledge and there's knowledge of the states, which can only happen with experience. You can't get that other ways. Take a blind man. He could read about the color red his entire life and not know what it is, but you give him 1 second of the blessing of sight and he sees it, he knows what it is. You have to have, so these are the two knowledges that come together. So the prophet said, so people came, how do we fight? So he said, "You may not kill women, you may not kill children, you may not kill the elderly. Fight only those who fight you, and if they stop, you stop. For God does not love the starter of wars." Torture was expressly forbidden. What does our commander-in-chief say about torture? It's okay, no problem. Waterboarding, bring it back. Muslims weren't allowed to fight for 13 years, and this is the first time that they're starting to actually understand when it's okay. Does this sound like the Geneva Convention to you? Because it does a lot to me. The opportunity to have a just war is only a defensive war, and there are rules of engagement. Don't kill civilians. Kill only those who are combatants, and even then, if they want peace, you come and have peace. So this is the Geneva Convention 1,300 years before. Go to capitals, go to Washington, D.C., go to the Supreme Court. There's a big statue honoring Muhammad as one of the greatest lawgivers of all time. Don't believe me? Go there and see it and be like, this guy wasn't fake news. And people say, well, but Islam says kill the unbelievers. No, it doesn't. There are specific contexts at a point where there were people who were pretending to convert to Islam, and then during Medina, then they would go out to the tribes outside of Medina at Khadak and at Khaybar and tell them this is what the Muslims are doing, and then they would go out and kill their caravans, and then kill the Muslims and steal their caravans. That's called espionage. That's treason. So yes, the punishment for treason is death. And we have that. We actually have capital punishment. And unbelievers are not defined as Muslims. Unbelievers are hypocrites, are those who have given up the afterlife for this life. They don't worship God or they don't value values. They want it for themselves. They're narcissistic. They want to win, 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 win. And they don't care about the damage they leave behind. Muslims, this is the Quran, chapter 9, verse 107. As for those who established a mosque for harm and disbelief, like ISIS, this is ISIS, the Quran is talking about ISIS, to divide believers and to be an outpost for those who make war on God. They will swear, we desire only what is best, but God bears witness that truly they are liars. These are the losers in life. These are the ones who are unbelievers. So it doesn't matter what you call yourself. It matters what you do. And again, if you want further evidence, go to Washington Irving. Go to, the guy who wrote Rip Van Winkle, American author. Did you know he wrote a book called Life of Muhammad? So if you want to hear about it from a non-Muslim, go to him. He wrote a book, and this was about a battle campaign that Muhammad took to the north to the Byzantine Empire. What happened is when Muhammad came to power, he sent out an emissary to the Persian Empire, to the Byzantine Empire, to the Abbasid Empire, to the Abyssinian Empire. And he said, listen, this is who I am, this is who we are. And so what did the Byzantine Empire do? They captured him, they beheaded him, cut his limbs off, and sent him back. So then Muhammad said, well, what am I supposed to do? So God says, now you have to go fight. You can't let this go without being answered. Now, what would we do? If we sent an ambassador to North Korea saying, hey, let's talk, and then Kim Jong-un cut him up, cut his head off, send him back to us in a box, what would we do? What should we do? We should take a stand. Don't you ever do that. You can't do that to an American. And you just lost because we are going to make sure that you understand that. That's what we should do. So this is what happened during that time. And this I'll just read to you from Washington Irving's book. The army went to the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine Empire got scared. They ran away. So then Muhammad was like, I have no one to fight. This is fine. So then the Christian, because the Byzantine Empire was where you get Orthodox Christianity. So if you remember, the Roman Empire split into two, the Western into Orthodox. And so they were worried. The Christians were worried. They're like, what is Muhammad going to do? You know, he's here. He's going to torch everything. So what Muhammad did, and this is from the book, just before the army left Tabuk, the monks of the monastery of St. Catherine in the Valley of Sinai came to see the prophet. He gave them audience and granted them a charter, which is comparable to the charter of Medina he gave to the Jews. Its main terms were the following. The Muslims would protect the churches, the monasteries of the Christians. They would not demolish any church property either to build a mosque or to build houses for Muslims. Number 2, all ecclesiastical properties of the Christians would be exempt from every tax. Number 3, no ecclesiastical authority would ever be forced by Muslims to abandon his post. Number 4, no Christian would ever be forced by the Muslims to become a convert to Islam. And number 5, if a Christian woman marries a Muslim, she would have full freedom to follow her own religion. This is the life of Muhammad. If you want to know Islam, you have to go to his life, not ISIS. Quran 22, verse 39-40. Permission is granted to those who fought because they have been wronged. Only for saying, our Lord, were it not God's repelling people, some by means of others in monasteries, churches, synagogues, and mosques, where God's name is mentioned, would have been destroyed. Now, why don't you hear that on Fox News? God is commanding Muhammad to go protect churches and synagogues? Why doesn't that come up? And then go back to the definition of disinformation. And then think about it. Reflect upon it and use your heart. Where do you end up? But you might say, yes, terrorists are killing people in the name of Islam. Yeah, they are. They're crazy. They're murderers. That's the 0.01%. But I could tell you the same. I could say, well, in Jesus, again, Matthew 10:34, I come not to bring peace, but to come to bring the sword. And I could say, you know what? Joseph Comey, he's just following the Bible. He's raping those women. Deuteronomy said it was okay. The KKK, they lynched. I mean, do you remember? I mean, we forget. 1920s. KKK, 5 million members. Lynchings of black people were common. And you know what they were doing? They were purifying the race for God. You know why? Because Noah had 3 kids, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Remember that? Japheth, you get white people. Ham, you get black people. Shem, you get brown people like me, and you get Abraham and Jesus from Shem. Okay? So then Ham, during the time where Noah was drunk on the beach, go to Genesis. You don't need me, but go to Genesis. He did something to him. He doesn't, and the Bible is not specific on it. Jewish scholars believe he either castrated him or he sodomized him or whatever. But then Noah condemned him, ostracized him, and said, you, Canaan, will now serve your brothers. Hamites will serve your other people. So the KKK and the Confederacy says, yeah, that's the natural world. They should serve us because they came from Ham. Right? That's what they did. Do you believe that? Many people do. Many people today do. What's terrorism again? Ezekiel 9:6, God said, go through the city and kill. Spare no one and have mercy on no one. Kill the old man, the young woman, the mothers, and the children. Defile the temple and fill its courtyard with corpses. Now, how about if I take this and say to non-Muslims, say I go to the Middle East or I go to Iraq and I go to a bunch of Muslims and say, listen, I'm going to teach you about Islam. I'm going to get a nice announcer, an analyst, right, on TV, and start putting these verses up and start showing the KKK, start showing Jim Jones and the Jonestown Massacre, David Koresh, Marshall Applegate, and say that's what this is. And they're like, oh, no wonder the U.S. is fighting so many wars. Would that be fair? That would be totally unfair. That would make me a liar. That would make me a loser and a hypocrite. Because Christianity is a religion of peace and love and justice. We know that. All of us here know that. Other people don't know that. But this could be done. Remember, I told you I could disinform too. But that would make me one of the losers in the afterlife. And then when I die in the day of judgment, I have to answer for that. And I don't want to answer for that. When I die, God comes to me and says, listen, I did what I tried. If I was wrong, I was ready to learn. I'm ready to learn from anybody who can prove me wrong in this audience or any other time. Teach me. I'm ready. But I'm going after it with a clear heart, and I'm working. I'm using this. With whatever capacity I'm using, trying. Now, when I did this talk, one of the events, somebody read a book. They came prepared. They brought a book. And they said they read a long passage, very pejorative and nasty things about Islam and Muslims. Had no basis in reality, no basis. And she's reading this long passage, it's taking about a minute. I said, ma'am, she brought up like two of things, and then her husband said, no, let her finish. I said, okay, but out of respect to a speaker, you can't just throw 10 questions. You should do 1 or 2 at a time so that I can answer it. Otherwise, it's loaded, and that's rhetoric, and that's not real. But anyway, she went. And I said, you read, I said, who wrote that book? She had no idea. She was this author. And I said, okay, tell me the bibliography. What's the footnote? Well, I don't know. It's just here. I said, well, go ahead and look it up. I'm waiting. Well, here, why don't you look it up? I said, no, why should I answer a question? You don't even know if that person is authorized or credentialed to make those statements, and you didn't even care. You just read something that was mean and nasty and hateful, and you accepted it as truth, and you're asking me to defend it. Why? Didn't you listen to the entire lecture I just gave? Because if you do that, if you want to use those standards, I can do the same thing to you. Christianity is an engine to enslave mankind, a mere contrivance to filch power and wealth. Explain it to me. And then you should say, well, who said that? And I tell you, that was Thomas Jefferson. And I have the quote, and I have the source, and I got all of it. The Bible teaches us rape, cruelty, and murder. Thomas Paine. I'm not asking my Christian brothers and sisters to explain that. They weren't even Christians. You've got Unitarians, you've got Deists, you've got Masons, you've got Quakers. I'm not asking you to explain what non-Muslims negatively say, or non-Christians negatively say about Christianity, because I know it. I got it. I already know about it, because I read it. I read the Bible. I went to churches. In Georgetown, actually, the first year you go, you have to take, and this was, I really give the Jesuits credit, a course called The Problem of God. You actually had to go to all these different churches and synagogues to pray so that you could broaden your own horizon. It was so amazing. According to the Justice Department, 94% of terrorist attacks performed in the U.S. from 1980 to 2005 have been from non-Muslims. 94%. Department of Justice, go to the website. You don't need me. You don't need to trust me. Go get it. So that one sign that said everyone's invited to the meeting except Islamic terrorists. So that meant 94% of terrorists were invited, but 6% were uninvited. I don't think they would have showed up anyway. But really, should we think about it? None of this is political. None of this is fake. If it is, in the Q&A, show me, because I'm ready to learn. October 2nd, 2017, Steve Paddock committed the worst mass shooting in U.S. history in Las Vegas, killed 58 people. Was that called terrorism? Did the highest officer, public servant of the land, call that terrorism? The worst mass shooting in U.S. history? No, because he wasn't brown. He wasn't Muslim. He wasn't saying Allahu Akbar. He wasn't saying this stuff. defiling my religion. That's what these people, they defile my religion. According to the State Department's Country Report on Terrorism in 2015, which is required by law, the U.S. Statute Title 22, Section 2656F, the State Department must give to Congress every year a report on the status of terrorism for national security purposes. So ISIL killed, in 2015, 14 people in San Bernardino, 130 in several Paris attacks. And in 2015, they killed 7,500 Iraqis. And in 2014, they killed 12,000 Iraqis. Okay? So that's 144 divided by 19,500. So what percentage of terrorist victims are Americans, are white Americans? What percentage? 0.007%. So 99.993% of terrorist victims are Muslims. And this doesn't account for the abductions and the rape. If you continue to read the report, ISIL in 2015 abducted, systematically raped, and abused thousands of women and children as young as 8. Women and children are sold and enslaved, distributed as spoils of war, forced into marriage and servitude. Where do you think these refugees are coming from? They're all terrorists, right? Because they're Muslim. Just like the lady in Dawson says, is Dr. Virji really a citizen? But we need to be scared. We need to build walls, and we need to have registries, and we need to do fake tweets of Muslims killing the Virgin Mary. I mean, really? We have a child deciding the fate of the world, a child, a bully. So we're wondering. So we're turning these people away. Jesus was a refugee. Is that what he would do today? Would Jesus say, let's waterboard? Let's turn these people. You know, the Rohingya women who are getting slaughtered in Myanmar, these are women who have been gang raped. They're living in refugee camps in Bangladesh. They are in the same clothes that they were raped in. Gang raped in. How much more demeaning can we be? But that's not terrorism. You don't even know about that. That's Muslims being killed by Buddhists. That doesn't deserve. We have a narrative here. We need to stick with it. We need to put fake news statues and fake. Look at the tweets today, even. 160 mass shootings in the U.S. since Columbine in 1999. So Sandy Hook, Orlando, Aurora, Las Vegas, with over 500 deaths. Only 4% of these were Muslim shooters. So 96% were not Muslim. So when it comes to legislation, we should legislate like hell to keep brown people away so that we can stop that 4%. The 96% is okay. Let's keep that going. No problem. Is this logical? We're in an academic institution. You're allowed to use reason. You're expected to use it. You're going to be challenged to use it. And you're going to be far better of a person when you use it and when you do it. Far better than I am. Dylan Roof, Steve Paddock, Eric Harris, Aaron Alexis, Adam Lanza, etc., etc. Are these Muslim names? Do these sound like Muslim names to you? If we want to generalize, though, if you wish to generalize and say 0.001% of Muslims are terrorists, then they're all terrorists and we should have a registry, then let's generalize. Because 5 out of the last 12 Nobel Prize winners were Muslims. So 42% were Muslims. Now what's higher, 42% or 0.001%? Then logically, Islam must be a religion of peace. Because we've produced 42% of the last Nobel Prize winners. So let's generalize. Now that would be absurd, right? So I look at it and say, well, isn't the other way absurd? Lord's Resistance Army, 100,000 civilians killed, 20,000 children abducted. Is that okay? Why aren't we fighting this? Why aren't we protesting? Why don't we even see it in the media? What is the media hiding? You know, I don't blame people for not knowing because they just don't show this. Is it because there's a narrative? It's got to be brown people, but when Christians do it or Buddhists do it, doesn't fit. Let's make a brief statement about it, but let's move on to the brown person who ran over people in New York. And then just keep hounding that, and eventually people will come and say to me, in my own town, are you a citizen? One of my patients came up to me the other day and said, oh, but you're one of the good ones. I said, do you hear yourself? No, I didn't say anything, and I don't blame her. It's phenomenal, and it's an honor to be her doctor. She doesn't know. But did you hear that? It's, by definition, when you're brown and you're Muslim, you're down here, but you can climb up and get out. That's what you're saying, right? Let's move on to women. A less controversial topic, right, these days. So Islam oppresses women and forces them to cover their hair. How many people believe that? It's either shy people or very, very well-informed people. So nobody is raising their hand. So correct, it doesn't. Absolutely does not. Now, does that mean that certain tribal societies don't oppress women? No, they absolutely do. That's a problem. That's a problem worldwide, including here. We have these problems. And if you want to look at somebody else's dirty laundry, let's compare it to our own dirty laundry. Let's not compare their dirty laundry and say, well, we're really good with liberty, etc. No, we got problems with women's rights and, sadistic behavior and non-equal pay. That all exists here. The Prophet Muhammad said, a man should respect in all women the womb that bore him. It's written, it's historically proven he said this. Compare that to Access Hollywood, right? He was a reformer. Islam gave women the right to own property, the right to vote, and the right to divorce men in the 7th century. And he stopped all of this burying women alive. That's why they wanted to kill him. He was giving rights to women, and they said, they're animals. We feed them. We clothe them. Who the heck? And it was crazy. And they laughed at him. When did we get the right to vote here? Women. 1920. 27th Amendment. That's right. So, 1,300 years later, we got the right to vote. They got the right to vote. Who's oppressing whom? And in Islam, divorce is not a sin. I know it is in certain sects of Christianity, it's not. For Muslims, a man and a woman are two imperfect beings, but they are half of a soul, so they come together to form a complete soul. But a divorce can happen, and it can be justified, and it's not a sin. It's considered makruh, meaning allowable, but one of the worst of the allowable things. It's not sin, because sometimes you have to do that. I mean, if a woman is being beaten, or if there's infidelity or something, then that's okay. So women got the right to divorce. Now imagine societies where women, they get divorced, they get ostracized, it's taboo. You don't look at them, you don't talk to them. What happens? That happens. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen in Muslim communities. We are as much to blame for that, because we don't follow our own scripture. It's everywhere. Colossians 3:18, wives, submit yourselves to your husbands, for that is what you should do as Christians. 1 Corinthians 11:5-7, any woman who prays in public with nothing on her head, she might as well shave her head. And since shaving her head is shameful, she should cover her head. This is Peter, New Testament. He wrote most of the New Testament, right? 14 books of like the 27 books. It's Peter and his letters. So if you accept the Bible as the Word of God, and you don't accept Peter, then that's a conversation to be had. The Quran never once mentions a woman having to cover her hair. Never. The Quran talks about principles, modesty. Keep sexuality inside the marriage. Don't put it everywhere. Don't put it on TV and the radio and the news. Keep it between a man and a woman. Keep it private. Lust your spouse. I lust my spouse. I don't need to go anywhere else. We have a paradigm here where we've taken freedom as our platform and we've converted it to a regressive type of freedom in certain aspects. Now, to the Muslim woman, she looks at Western cultural aspects of women and says, you think I am oppressed. What about you? You have to walk half naked in a thong or a bikini and beauty contests to be judged by men who sit there judging you. You have to dress down to make it up in the world. You're not paid equally. Look at how many gropings. I mean, I can't even, I try to keep up. I can't keep up with all the people. And again, it has nothing to do with party. Bill O'Reilly, Roger Ailes, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Roy Moore, Harvey Weinstein, Charlie Rose, and then the latest today. Right, unbelievable. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. And then Muslims are saying, scratching their heads saying, what, really, us? So in Islam, there was actually, I'll just give you this last event. This happened in September in Northeastern Middle School in Connecticut. A Connecticut school cancels a Muslim female speaker due to death threats against the teacher who invited her. So Anam Chowdhury was talking about empowerment of Muslim women. Okay, now this is published in the international section of the Evening Standard, which is a British publication. Why didn't that make mainstream news? So Islam oppresses women. Now there's a speaker trying to empower women, and she's got death threats, so the school cancels. Where is that? Where are our values again? And why don't you know that? Why did I have to go to a British publication to find that out? And that's what I do. I go to all of it that I have time to. I look at American media, I look at Canadian news, I look at Al Jazeera, I look at Press TV, I look at British, the BBC, because I think somewhere the truth is probably in between, in the middle somewhere, because everybody's got their own angle, right? But why don't we know this? Why so much focus on a headscarf? Why is that such a big deal? Aren't we not supposed to judge a book by its cover? Did Mary ever not wear a headscarf in public? See, for Muslims, for women, and I hate to be the one to talk about this. I try to get my wife to come up and talk about this. She's far more qualified, but she's also among the shy people. But to the Muslim woman, it's the external manifestation of an internal idea of modesty. It's like a flag or a banner. No different than a cross. When you wear a cross, somebody could ask you, why are you wearing a symbol of Roman torture? It's not. It's a symbol of the ultimate mercy. The fact that God so loved the world that he gave his only son. That is the ultimate I can think of in mercy. It's your banner. So to the Muslim woman, when they wear that, they're saying, listen, stop. Don't grope me. Don't lust me. I'm just as good as you. You can look at me for my mind, not my body. I can do anything you can. I don't want those advances. In Iran, 40% of doctors are women. How many Muslim countries have had women heads of state before us? 4. So who is the oppressed one? Again, and I'm not comparing one being better than the other. There is dirty laundry on both sides. There's a lot of problems in the Muslim world with women. I don't disagree with that. I agree with that. But there's also areas that they're better than us. There are areas that we're a lot better, and there are areas that we have problems too. So we should look at that. And again, it's about perspective. There isn't a right or wrong here. It's only advancement. If you have a strong mind, you consider everything, an open heart, then at the end it's progress. Because where this lands and where all of you who are studying at the university in 5 years, 10 years, how you address the world and how the world addresses you is going to come through your mind and your perceptions. Existentialism, right? Your reality is what you perceive, your senses, your touch, taste, feel, your thought. So we need to empower that, and we need to nurture that and make it better. If it's closed, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're rich. It doesn't matter if you're whatever. You're not going to add value to the earth. If you have a stronger mind, it doesn't. Even if you're a janitor, if you're a custodian, no problem. That's a very noble profession. My son asked me, is it okay if I'm a janitor? I said, under the condition that you're the best one there. Absolutely. You know why? Because the school, they wouldn't be able to last without you. Imagine if you stopped working. In a week, everyone will be sick. That's totally noble compared to cable TV. Imagine if I lost cable TV for a week. I'd be a better person, right? Our values in our society are, I think we just have to consider those. So why don't men have to wear the scarf? Is anybody curious about that? Raise your hand if you're curious about that, because if you're not curious, I can just move. Okay, good. The shot. All right. So in Islam, we have an understanding between the genders, again, separate but equal. So we have no different than the yin and yang. We believe in polar opposites. We believe that we live in a relative world. So we live in a world that is understood by differences. Okay. Similarly, up and down, hot and cold, man and woman, large and small. It's the balance among the two. So in Islam, we believe that it's a divided spirit, and the man and woman come together, not exactly the same, but equal. Okay, so the men have more of a tendency to be possessors and to be visual. The women have more of a tendency to try to become ornaments to obtain that type of attention. So Islam tries to address that. Now, remember, it has to come from the heart. It can't be forced on anybody. It's a difference between prohibition and staying away from, abstaining from alcohol, right? One is a law being forced on you, saying you can't do it because you can't, and you're upset about that because you want to do it. The other is, I've internalized the idea, therefore I'm going to do it. That's where Islam begins, and that is where it speaks from. So for the man has the first hijab, which he has to turn away. If he sees something provocative, if he sees a woman who is dressed in a certain way and he's stimulated, he has to turn away because that is reserved for his wife. And the man has the first hijab. So if the man does that, if you can't see it though, it's invisible, right? If I were to do that, you couldn't tell. But could somebody? Would somebody know? So in Islam, again, it's not about this life, it's about the afterlife, and it's about virtue, and it's about these principles which we are supposed to embody and to embrace. So the man has the first hijab. He actually has to turn away. Now, Christianity says the exact same thing. Matthew 5:27. You have heard that it was said, do not commit adultery. I tell you, anyone who looks at a woman and wants to possess her is guilty of adultery. So if your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. Jesus said this in Matthew. This is not Old Testament stuff. Same principle, same idea, no different. Now imagine that. Imagine, God forbid, sexuality was limited to a man and a woman, right? Terrible, right? What do we have now? We have pornography, internet pornography. Do you know that internet pornography has now entered the medical arena? We're very worried about it because of what it's doing to society. Did you know that internet pornography sites have more visits than Amazon, Twitter, and Netflix combined? Did you know that a recent meta-analysis was done on pornography, and both man and a woman who are engaged in internet pornography, either one of them, express a lot more violence to their partner and are much more likely to abuse their partner when they engage in that? Did you also know that pornography, engaging in internet pornography, increases risk of divorce and infidelity by 300%? And some people say, oh, I don't care, I'm just going to do it. Well, that's one way to go about it. Do you want to be a human or do you want to be an animal? Because these are animal instincts. We're called to be both, right? Because as human beings, we have a celestial component, which is a spirit that lives forever, and we have a physical component. We're supposed to balance the two. So we can become more spiritual, we can become more physical, and just be like an animal. Fine. Loneliness is the next epidemic in the United States. 40% of Americans are lonely, even if they're married. And pornography significantly increases the risk of the feeling of loneliness. So it's gotten to the point where it's an issue in even the medical community. So when Islam comes up and says, listen, this is kind of our solution, or this is the way we're going to do it, we're going to try it this way, then you can say, well, you're oppressing, but say what your problem is, too. I mean, all these sexual scandals, all of them, that's not, I mean, really, we just have control, right? Men have control. Men can just control themselves. It's a magic switch. Talk to a man. And it's biological. It's not that inclination is evil. It's not. It was built into us. It just needs to be disciplined like any other of our appetites. Eating. You can't eat too much. You're going to get a heart attack. You can't sleep too much. So that's the Islamic perspective. That's where it's coming from. You're not going to get this from the media. This is where you're going to get from talking to Muslims or learning about Islam. All right. So I think we're gotten a lot of the signs from my wife that I'm talking too much. So I want to end with some of the responses we've had to the lecture, and then I want to get into a Q&A. And I want you to teach me something that I can learn and I can go look up myself and see where I'm wrong. And I will thank you for that. So people protested me at the church. And I thought that was, that bothered me. Out of all the things that hurt me, because this was my community. And I was like, that is so stupid. I said, if you want to listen to me first, then protest what I have to say. Isn't that logical? Isn't that better? You don't even know what I'm going to say. But there's so much hate and vile there. It's like it doesn't even matter what you say. You could be up there and preach anything. Preach charity. Preach free clinics. You're evil, I'm going to protest you. Is that where we are? That hurt. We had to start asking for security. We have security here. We've asked, and I appreciate you being here, sir, because we have gotten death threats. I got a death threat in Latin. Somebody sent that. We had to translate it. And I was talking to Pastor Mann. I was like, man, this guy must be smart. He knew I went to Georgetown. They give us our diplomas in Latin. She's like, no, you're giving him too much credit. Stuff like, the world's going to be better when you're dead. And we had, when we went to one of the talks, we had a number of the social media people in Confederate flags with guns saying, bad stuff about me. I mean, really, look at me. I've never touched a gun in my life. I've worked in free clinics. You think there's a bomb coming your way? Is that what you think? Because of my name, my color? So, this is what we're up against. Let me read to you one of the comments we got on YouTube. This is directed to me. It was on the YouTube site for a while. You are wrong. Your comments about Christians, President Trump, are short-sighted, making you appear blind or in a drug-induced coma. Your view on Islam and terrorism is way off. Who the F do you think we are fighting, you dumb ASS? The recent election is the backlash from bull SHIT we have been shoveled from people like you and the previous administration. If you don't like it here, then get the F out and try ISIS territory and tell us what you think. Now, did I ever say I didn't like it here? Did I ever say that? That was the message. Did he listen to what I said? Did it even matter what I said? And you know what? I'm not here for people like him because there's nothing I can do for him. He's made up his mind. But there are people, and I believe very much everyone is good. Everyone is good. I think there's disinformation, and I think ignorance and fear causes a lot of this problem. And if we're brave enough to address it, then we will all be better for it. And you just have to go back to the Constitution. Go back. Don't even go to your religious. Go to the Constitution. Go to the Declaration of Independence. It's all there. But this is the kind of stuff, since when has preaching inclusion and love and truth been so dangerous? It hasn't stopped yet. So this happened in my own community again, and it makes me regret staying, because I made the decision to stay because it was a hard road. I could have easily left. And maybe when this idiot does this registry, maybe I will go. Because I'm tired too. But at my own hospital, there was a patient family who was there visiting in the nursing home. Now, in rural medicine, I don't know if you know this, we're a lot more rural than you guys. 1,500 people. As a doctor, you're it. I mean, I'm the only full-time doctor who lives in town. And I take care of patients in the ER, I take care of people in the hospital, and I take care of people in the clinic and in the nursing home. And people, after the game, they come, they show up on my doorstep. And it's my honor to take care of you. You're coming to me because you're vulnerable, you need my help. I should help you, and I'm going to. But there was a family visiting with one of my nursing home patients who started saying, I'm the Antichrist again, I'm this, I'm that. And I wasn't there. Some of the nurses defended me, and they were upset about that. And all of a sudden, that escalated to needing the church priest to come in. And then a week later, I found out about it. The nurse came to me and said, I can't believe this, Dr. Virji, I can't this. And I said, just relax, what happened? He said, well, this happened, they said this. And I said, they don't know you, they don't know what you've done, and they don't know how you're always here and how you've spent so many hours. And I said, I know, of course. Why do you think I'm doing these talks? But that just happened. A few weeks ago, we were sitting in a local diner, and a local resident sat right where we were, in our booth. I had 15 minutes. It was a call day. I called my wife and said, let's meet for lunch. We met. I had maybe 10 minutes to eat. She came and she sat down there. And we were shocked. Like, just sat. I said, Sheila, why don't you sit down? Telling me about how bad I had written an editorial about love and action and inclusion. And I quoted Martin Luther King Jr., who said, listen, those of you who think you can just pray this away, that's a callous misuse of prayer. The God who gave you the mind for thinking, the body for functioning, that would be an insult to him. You have to pray, yes, no doubt about that, because we're feeble, but you have to go out and do. I put that quote on there. She was very mad about that. She said, that's only one man. How dare you quote him? And I said, Sheila, let me ask you, you think I should be on a registry? Absolutely, 100%. To me, and I said, look at my wife, look at her, and I said, do you think she should be on a registry? Now she starts fumbling a little bit. Why should I have to worry about that? Maybe I should. Maybe I should be on a registry. But I promise you, that day that happens, I'm out. Because I'm not going to put my kids through that. My wife and I, we went through Islamophobia, 10 rounds of it post 9/11. We're not doing it again. Somebody chased her with a baseball bat because of what she wears. Aren't we a free country? Is it a free country? Is she not allowed to wear that? So I'm not going to let that happen to my children. I think that would be a bad father. So if that happens, I'm out. And I've been asked we've had so many reporters, and people are asking me, well, is that going to happen? I'm like, I don't know. This guy is so unhinged. The next day he could do something. Like these tweets, they're so stupid and childish and ridiculous and so purposeful to create hate. Don't fall into that trap. Because you know what? Tomorrow it might be you. It might be you. Right now it's Muslims. In the past, Jews, Vietnamese, Japanese, the Irish. Tomorrow it's you. It is. It was interesting. One of my patients came up to me after we did the first talk, and he said, I'm so glad you did this. And he was a Norwegian, and where we are in Dawson, it's most Norwegians. He married a Swedish. Now, back then, that was taboo. And he and his wife got all these death threats, so they had to move. And he was like, I'm so glad. And it was so educational to me. I would never have thought two Caucasians but that was also an eye-opener that, this is actually not a conversation about Islamophobia. This is a conversation about love over hate and inclusion over exclusion. We are all better together, all of us. And if Caucasians have a certain status in society and minorities are starting to get into higher positions, that doesn't mean they're going down. That just means everybody's going up, and that's going to be more peaceful. That shouldn't be the interpretation. It should be merit-based, and it should be based upon what we can provide. And really, the diversity and inclusion is an answer. And I've gotten so many letters and so many kind postcards and messages and gifts from people all over the country. And that's probably where I get the strength to even do this. I had a former colonel in the U.S. Army saying, you've done more for the Constitution with your talks than I've done in 20 years of service. And how could you not be touched by that? It was so heartfelt. I had a letter from Chloe, who was a 7-year-old from Vermont, saying, Dr. Virji, you're my hero. I want to be just like you. I know this is hard. Please keep being brave. This is amazing. And I got letters from people from the LGBT community, people from the Jewish community, people from the Muslim community, people from Christian communities who are saying, I can't believe I can't even be around my own parish because people are talking about how Charlottesville was okay. So it's all of us. It's now time to stand together. Now I'm going to end with a quote, and then we'll get to hopefully a Q&A session, and then back home to the kids, I promise. This is an article in the New Yorker, July 10th, 2017. The Sunday after Trump was elected president, about 150 people gathered on the Capitol steps and marched, and a small group of Trump supporters staged a counter-protest. One of them was Joseph Whiteneck, a 6'6", 350-pound, laid-off Caucasian metal worker. He was wearing a Make America Great Again cap. A number of anti-Trump supporters marched wearing Guy Fawkes masks, ripped his sign out of his hands, and tried to set his shirt on fire. He said, when they brought out the lighters, I was genuinely scared for my life. A small Muslim woman wearing hijab, that's the headscarf, forced herself between Whiteneck and the people, assaulting him. She was Amina Amdeen, a 19-year-old student at the university who originally immigrated to the U.S. from Iraq. According to Whiteneck, she stood there like a mountain trying to stop the violence. Later, Amin remarked, "I do not stand for what he stands for, but I know his fears and concerns are valid. I love this country so much. I do not like what I see coming." So I'll end with that. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you for bearing me all this time. And I will take a few questions, if that's okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think I answered everything. That's a first.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I was just interested. You were saying that if they do an active registry and you would leave, where would you go?
To Dubai. I have a lot of family there. Very nice life. Lots of property. Easy. I had a job lined up. Very simple. There's no such thing as racism there. I don't know if you've ever been there, because it's a multicultural. They've got churches, they've got mosques, they've got synagogues, they've got everything. People don't even know what they don't even know what the meaning of that word is there. That's where I would go. I had my plan. It was set. At last minute, we said, let's take the hard road. Yes, ma'am.
Why did you first decide to become a medical career?
Ever since I was young, I always felt I knew I would be a doctor. I always really enjoyed it. Initially, I was always good with sciences. It was natural to me, math and stuff like that. Tested out a lot of my subjects in college. And but when I originally wanted to become a doctor, one of my really close family friends who was a doctor used to take us to rounds to his hospital, and he used to take us to the doctor's lounge, and you had free ice cream and free candy. That was initially what started, and I said, I want that. But then later it became much more of a moral calling, and I wanted to do a lot more, and more than just being an average physician working in a turnstile practice. And one of my mentors, Dr. Robert Cotillo, who worked in free and underserved clinics all of his career, had a large impact on me. And then when I started doing volunteer work, it affected me further, and I said, this has got to be part of who I am, and this is what I want to do. Yes, sir.
We all encounter the really hateful things, not to the extent that you do, but everybody knows that element. But it doesn't take very many of those to make a big impression. What is your impression of how large that group of truly irreconcilable, hateful people are?
Sure. So it's a great question, and I don't know if I have an answer for you on that. There's a group out there. In Dawson, when it first happened, and I looked up the statistics, and 60% of the county voted for him, I was wrong to generalize, because I started generalizing. These people just wanted me. And that's not it. The people of Dawson are good. They're kind. They're generous. They're gracious. And they just didn't know. They just didn't know. They didn't hate. And I felt, after I thought about it and I reflected and I talked to a lot of people, they didn't care for racism, but they didn't generally care about it either, because they're more interested in healthcare and crop rotations and things of that sort. So it wasn't that they were hateful, not at all, but they were susceptible to hate speech that they didn't even know. When they start talking about Islam hates us, okay, sure. It must hate us if he's saying it. They're susceptible to that. So it's not that they're bad and hateful. It's that they're susceptible. So it came to be an idea of education and spreading that. I believe very firmly people are good, very much so. And even the person who called me the Antichrist that day, I don't think he's evil. I think he's misinformed. And I was asked that actually on Al Jazeera Network when they interviewed me. They said, do you think a person who hates Muslims can be a good person? And I said unequivocally yes. Because that person who hates me, he could be the same person who's at home and who's adopted an orphan from Africa, or who is building homeless shelters, or who is going on mission trips. He could be that guy. I don't know that. He could be far better than me. I just know that there's a problem with the information, and I'm going to address that. Thank you for the question. Yes, sir.
So you've made it very clear that if this registry thing becomes a law, that you would leave the country. What would be your advice to people who feel the same way but don't have the means?
People who feel the same way, as in minorities who feel the same way?
Well, like other Muslims that
Yeah.
want to leave the country but wouldn't have the means to do it. Like they wouldn't have a place to go or the money to
Yeah.
get there.
So I think at that point it's going to end up becoming an individual decision for whatever family and whatever person and whatever society that they're in and their own experiences. So most Muslims aren't out there doing what I'm doing. You know, most Muslims, and I hate to say it, they're very homogenous in their own groups. They just sit there and they don't reach out, and that's a problem. That's a problem with us, actually, the Muslim community in general. There's a lot that just, I mean, if you go to Washington, D.C., you'll see there's a Pakistani mosque, and they don't talk to the Indian mosque, and they don't talk to the Iraqi mosque, and they don't talk to the Saudi mosque, and let alone reaching out to other people. But I think Muslims in general, I want to remind myself and remind everyone here that it wasn't me who reached out. It was a pastor who reached out to me. She was the one who inspired me. I should have been the one. So I learned from her. So my advice to others would be to do the same thing in their communities, to not be homogenous. There's a lot of good people everywhere. Now, for me, it would be very much a personal decision because of our experiences post 9/11. You know, and everybody's going to have to make decisions based upon what their experiences are, what their capacities are, and what they think they need to do. So I very much define myself as a caretaker. I look at this, and I do this every day. Who am I? What's my purpose? Where am I going? I do this multiple times a day. Who am I? I'm a caretaker. Caretaker of what? Whatever God put in front of me. My patients, my family, the land, people around me. What's my purpose? To know my Lord. How do you know your Lord? You know your Lord by doing good things, good deeds. Because in Islam, the equation is if you do evil deeds, you stay in the soul. If you stay in the soul, it puts distance between you and your Creator. If there's distance between you and your Creator, you can't know your Creator. If you can't know your Creator, you can't love your Creator. Where am I going back? I'm going back to Him. So for me, in this particular instance, my bigger caretaking responsibility would be to my 3 children, particularly my daughter. I wouldn't want her exposed to those things. Now, we were exposed to the normal racist things when we were young. I mean, that was normal. I was called the N-word all the time. I mean, people didn't even, I think I was confusing because I would be called Mexican things and Indian things and the N-word. I mean, it was almost like we're just going to call you something because we don't understand you, you know? And my kids don't get that here, but if it got to a point where I thought that there was any type of threat, and with a registry, I promise you, that's coming, because there's already threats out there. I mean, 3 mosques being, Islamophobic crimes have gone up 300% for the last 2 years. So would I be a good father to just say, well, we're going to just kind of keep working at this? Or, maybe the next time somebody chases my wife with a baseball bat, he actually gets to her. Then what do? I can live with myself. So from a personal decision, I would have to make that, and I would give the same advice to any individual. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Fatma. I'm a Muslim. I'm from Pakistan. I've been in Aberdeen about 8 years. I'm raising 2 boys, both Muslims. Where did the Christians and the Muslims go wrong?
I don't think Muslims and Christians have gone wrong at any given point in human history. I think that what's happened, okay, that's a big question. So I'm gonna answer that with a big answer. When we start turning religion into a noun instead of a verb, that's where the problem is. And that goes not just with Christians or Muslims, but it goes with Jews and Hindus and Buddhists and atheists and agnostics. So as soon as you say, I'm Muslim, you are not, because I've said this, you're not part of the group, I'm part of the group, and because it's my group, we have certain special knowledge you don't, you're going to heaven, or you're going to hell, we're going to heaven. And then when the Christians do that to us, then you are so easy to control, and I am so easy to control when that happens. And I think throughout human history, you'll see religion constantly being hijacked by authority figures for that purpose. So if we look at Christianity, we look at what did the early Christians believe. You have the Nazarenes, you have the Nestorians, the Jacobites, Origen of Alexander. Then you have Constantine converting and having the Council of Nicaea. Then you have proto-Orthodoxy being born, where you have Pauline scriptures kind of dominating the belief because it was more of a Gentile-friendly type of thing. You have the Crusades, where people were given these papal bulls. They were allowed to go out and kill in the name of God. You have the Salem witch trials. You have the KKK. You have On the Muslim front, ISIS, you have the Wahhabism principle, which is a cancer in our own community. And that is based upon us versus them. It's based upon that noun, which is we are different, and you are different, and we are saved, and you are not. And then if you look at ISIS and Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab, they're all splinter groups from that. We have to own that. Muslims haven't owned. Muslims need to own that. And they really need to stand up against this very firmly. And as Americans, we need to stand up against countries that accept that ideology. I mean, it's so oxymoronic that one of our greatest allies in that region is a Wahhabi state. That makes no sense at all. There's two Wahhabi states in that region. One is Qatar, and the other is Saudi Arabia. And we have decided to let them be our allies. So it's not just whether Muslims or Christians, but there's geopolitical issues, and there's a lot at stake in the landscape. A lot of it has to do with power. A lot of it has to do with stoking differences for power. So as a body of religious or morally striving individuals, my advice to myself and anyone else would be look at our text, look at our scholars, and understand that what you do is far more a function of who you are and what you believe than what you say you believe. And philosophically, I can prove that. I don't have the time right now. But that's the answer. Yes, sir.
Like, with the Muslims being, like, abused and everything, you say you would leave, and, like, other ones would too. Like, would you feel bad about leaving because you were born here, so this is technically your homeland?
Yeah.
Like, with the Palestinians, they're staying in their homeland even though they're being abused. And everything. So, like, would you feel bad about leaving? Like, you know, you're just kind of taking the way out just because you don't want to deal with it?
Yeah, so it's ironic somebody actually telling me this is my homeland. It's usually the opposite. But I actually wasn't born here. I was born in Africa. I was born in Kenya. I was born there, and after 6 months, my parents moved over here. A very international family. One brother born in England, the other one born in Italy. My parents came here. My dad did the whole American dream, became very wealthy. He very successful. Again, there are constant narratives at play here, constant battles at play. There's the big macro battle, which is what I'm doing right here on a Tuesday. Is it Wednesday night? I can't even remember. But then there's the micro battle, my own family. I have to care about them too, and you have to balance the two. So would I feel bad? Yeah. But what would be my greater duty to my family or to my community and to the society and to Americans and all this stuff? Yes, I'm an American no different than you or anybody else. I am. And my heart is here. I feel at home here. We travel. I go to Kenya. I've been to China, to the Middle East, to Europe, South America. I've been everywhere. And I feel so much better coming home. And yeah, it would be painful. Even in Dubai, which is a phenomenal place, it would be painful. But I have to put the duties as a father and a husband above the other stuff. Yes, ma'am.
In regards to women and how they're treated and all of these groping, sexual assault scandals. I don't think it's religion-based. It's about power and it's about our culture. And, you know, you could argue that our culture is based on Christian values, but I kind of, you know, even the ugliest woman can be assaulted. You know, she doesn't have to be dressed a certain way in order to get assaulted. And so that was basically a comment. I don't think you can really, you know, point towards the modesty as a defense against that kind of assault.
Yeah, so thank you for that comment. So I agree that there's definitely power elements in there, no doubt about that. I often ask myself this, too, as far as how do we stop that? Is the responsibility 100% on the man, or is the responsibility on both the man and the woman? I don't have the answer. I just have a approach to it. And this is what the Islamic kind of approach would be to. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like you go down to the middle of New York City, you park your car, you take your wallet and you put it on your car, and you walk away, and you come back, and somebody stole your wallet. Now, that was a crime, no doubt about that. Your rights were violated. But what did you do to prevent that from happening? And when I was in college, I thought about this a lot because date rape was a big deal, even at Georgetown. They would come in talking about date rape, and at the same time, men and women, I mean, we shared bathrooms, and it was, you know, people dressed and they behaved with intoxication and alcohol together, and it's like, well, what are we doing to stop that event? We could be doing more, and it feels as though we should be doing more. And the hijab is just a manifestation of that. Now, you could be a woman wearing hijab and very sexy clothes or whatever, and allure men. I mean, again, if we focus on the hijab, that's just not productive. Because my mom doesn't wear hijab. Many women, and so what? Who cares? Let a woman wear what she wants to wear. But the idea of, again, man and women being together without any rules, and from a society standpoint, what's that going to lead to? And how can we? Because this is a problem. You've said it. This is a problem. Maybe it's a bigger focus on the power thing, but we need to change this because it is an issue. I don't think I have all the answers. I can just provide you a perspective and maybe help from an outside view to think about it. And maybe you've got something that I don't have, and maybe we can talk about it. And I don't know. I'm more than happy. But thank you for your comments. Yes, ma'am.
We have a lot of Somali immigrants living in Aberdeen who are Muslim, and there's a lot of false perceptions about the Somalis in town. And I was just curious, what can we do as longtime residents of this community to be more welcoming and to I guess address some of the misconceptions when we hear them.
So I think the fact that you asked that question, the fact that we're at a university setting is very honorable and very much part of who we are as a country, and I think that's phenomenal. I think Somalia, if you look at it there's a lot of bad things that have happened there. They landed here for a reason. It wasn't that things were so great. And not just Somali refugees or Muslim refugees or refugees from anywhere. They're in shock. They don't understand. And it will probably take a generation or something like that for them to really grow into becoming more of comfortable as far as being an American. But I think that Somalis or any refugee communities, if you approach it with love and inclusion, and if you approach it with, just in your own heart, something that, and that being the message. And I had a very nice conversation with President Downs talking about, listen, we got to stop this tolerance thing, he said, and he's absolutely right. Tolerance is something you tolerate somebody who's wrong. You just tolerate them. We should include, and we should understand that we're all better when we're together and when we're learning from one another. And I think at a university, you guys are the experts at that. I think you guys have the most clout, and you guys are the most progressive thinking, and will understand that far better than I. To the Somali communities, I would also give advice, and I said, you should also outreach. We should outreach to others. Muslims should try to understand more, because we've been too homogenous, and we need to, why did I wait for a pastor to come talk to me versus me going out and talking to the community? I think there is responsibility on both sides. And when I'm with Muslims, they hear a very different talk. I'm telling them about things that we need to do as responsible citizens or responsible residents. I think that's the best way that I can answer that. Yes, sir.
I just thank you for your knowledge, your commitment, and your time to educate us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's my honor to be here. Thank you. I think we'll wrap it up with that. Again, thank you for your attention, and I hope you have a great night.